Welcome, welcome, welcome. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. Well, if you've never listened to this show, you're in for an interesting treat here. We have actually a great guest, right, Jen?
Yeah, totally.
So,
well, live radio, you never know what to expect, and we are in a situation where your guest is not here.
That sounds like Forrest Gump. Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
I know, yeah. I can't do mixed chocolate, so that's not my favorite. I need to know what I'm getting. I don't like surprises.
You don't like surprises?
No, not with my chocolate, no.
But that's the whole that's the whole, attitude of life, right?
I know.
Of life, it's like you're not living until you get surprised.
That's true.
Surprise, surprise, surprise. I'm surprised. All right. So, for people that haven't listened to the show, each week we try to interview somebody that hopefully knows something about business, that we can teach you something. Sometimes we'll have somebody teaching you SEO or one of those things regarding the internet, PPC, and that type of stuff. A couple of weeks ago, we had somebody just talking about inventory and how they have a retail location and what they need to do for the inventory. And then we've also had other people that have come in and they had a company and they went from A to Z. So that's what we try to do each week. We try to help businesses learn something about business, and it doesn't matter if this one-person show or a 5,000-person company. You might learn something. That's our goal each week. But Ask Brien is spelled ASKBRIEN, and nobody understands why Brien is spelled with an E. But someone who does have an E in their name, or excuse me, their title, we have
so official.
Exactly. Don't you have a drum roll? No.
I do.
All right.
Sure do.
All right. The engineer.
Hey.
Well, you can't have a show without an engineer.
That's true. So, happy to be here.
And most people don't realize this, but she's been on the show for over 1 year.
I have, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
I know.
I should have got a cupcake with a candle in it or something.
That's okay. That's all right.
Oh, you don't like sweets anyway?
Well, no, chocolate, yes. I will not turn that down.
But you need to know what kind of chocolate it is.
Yeah,
that's the key,
true.
right?
Yeah.
Dark chocolate, milk chocolate, there's a difference.
There is a difference. Dark chocolate is far superior. And they say that it's better for you, so I'm going to hold on to that.
So the health...
little bit of knowledge. And,
I'm going to be healthy. I'm going to have three chocolate bars after...
Yeah,
it sounds good.
It's okay if I have more than one, sure.
All right, so... Miss Engineer,
yes.
Or Mrs. Engineer, I should say.
Yes.
She's married.
I am.
All right, let's see. Give us one reason why Ask Brien is spelled with an E.
All right. Well, there are many, right? We go through a lot of these. I think there's a couple that I like, at least. You bring another level of excitement, right, about what you're talking about and the knowledge that you bring in.
And enthusiasm!
These poor microphones. And,
poor microphones. How about the people that are listening?
How about this? That parlays right into lack of empathy, which starts with an E, and you're blowing everybody's eardrums out, and mine included.
Never heard of the word.
Oh, yeah.
Never heard of the word.
No, that doesn't surprise me. Of course, we have to include education, which starts with an E. That's kind of the main thing.
But it's not like a formal education. Exactly.
You kind of have to know what you're talking about. And
or you can bluff.
That's true. Well, you know what? Sometimes lawyers have to do a little tap dance, right? Am I right? They kind of have to not necessarily bluff, but, kind of be quick on their feet, quick thinking. And that makes them an expert, of course, in what they're doing. And we know that our experts are well educated and have lots under their belt.
So how do you become an expert? What do you need for that?
Well, we say that there's a certain requirement. Of course, you can't just say, I've been doing this for 2 years. That makes me an expert. So we've kind of gathered that in order to be a quote-unquote expert, you're working 40 hours a week, times 50 weeks a year on average, which equals out to be about 5 years. But of course, we've also established that that's kind of blown out of the water. That's not, especially if you're an entrepreneur, that's really not what you're doing. Let's just double that. You're kind of living and breathing
double or triple
your entire existence. Right. So I guess, didn't we say that it equals out to closer to 10 years? And then you can say that you're, a true expert.
So it's actually the opposite. So
Am I mathing the wrong way?
It's like that triple Lundy dunk that
Yeah.
Rodney Dangerfield does on that show, right?
Right.
The triple one.
The triple
So,
Lundy.
so the way it works is 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year is 2,000. They say you need 5 years, okay,
5
which
years.
is 10,000 hours.
There's where my 10 was.
But it goes
Okay.
backwards, not
Yeah.
forward. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a commitment. And obviously, if you're interested in starting your own business, you can't just expect to kind of skate by. You won't get very far.
Well, and then it's your own business. So what happens? You know, if it's successful, you're going to be very successful
Yeah.
too, right?
Yeah.
And even if it's not successful, then you want to prove that you're right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's your
So
it's your baby.
There's a lot of it's called effort.
Effort. E for effort.
A new E.
I know, that's true. We can add that one. I think we've got a growing list here, and I think we've covered all of the E's.
Well, most of the experts are what? Entrepreneurs.
Yes.
That's
yeah.
another E, right?
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
And you need experience, right?
Yeah.
You know, whatever. And then Tracy, even though she's not here, we do know that she likes grease lightning.
That's
we talked
true.
about that last week, right?
Well, last week, of course, she's a big Olivia Newton-John fan, who, of course, was the star of Grease, and she loves her. And somehow, I think last week we forgot to mention Olivia Newton-John, and then literally on my way home, flipping the stations around, and up pops Grease. Grease is the word on my radio station.
See, that's what happens. You know, if you don't mention something, it's going to happen.
It'll come back around to you. Yes.
So you better make sure you take care of that.
That's true. But I'm with Tracy. That's one of my favorite shows. I love that one.
And Tracy this week is unavailable. She's on special assignment.
Okay. Very
I don't know
official.
what that means.
Is she sitting on a beach somewhere with a cocktail in her hand? Is
Probably,
that okay?
probably. Margaritaville, right?
Yes, good for her. Hopefully.
That was a good song too, Margaritaville.
That's true.
Jimmy Buffett.
That's
But we're not doing the Jimmy Buffett show. We are doing the Ask Brien show. So today we have a kind of a special treat. I have been practicing lawyer for over 33 years, and some people have asked me all the time, you know, you're an attorney. Why don't you just, give us some information? Because we really would like to learn, some things about law. We're running a business, and maybe, and we'll go into this later on in the show with legal steps and other things, but maybe you want to form a corporation or form an LLC or do something like that to protect you, and that's usually the first step. But we're going to go kind of like backwards here, and so we're going to explain a couple of things. So first of all, and this is really basically for California, although it probably applies to most states. So one of the things is people always ask about contracts. And so there are a couple of clauses that you need to have in every single contract. I'm not going to go over a legal theory concept here, which is in order to have a valid contract, you need to have an offer, acceptance, and consideration. That's what you need to have what's called a valid contract. So, and typically you would need to have it in writing. But you know what? People don't realize is you can have an oral agreement. So you and I can make a deal and say, listen, I'm going to buy that, I don't know what you got. I'm going to buy your watch,
Right.
and you're going to sell it to me for $20, and okay. And that's an oral contract, okay? And since I'm paying you consideration, $20, and I've offered to buy it, and you said, okay, I'll sell it to you, well, then we have a valid contract, even though it's not in writing.
So that begs the question, how do I prove that and vice versa? Because certainly it can just be, maybe I've changed my mind and I think the watch is worth 40 instead of 20, and now I'm refusing the sale. So how do we get to the point where there's an agreement?
So that's what we have.
He said, she said, right?
Exactly. It is a he said, she said. And it really is he said, she said.
Yeah.
Because we got a he and a she. So, but the point is that having a valid contract doesn't mean that you can enforce the contract. So you do have a valid contract. So some ways, like on an oral contract, that's a very, very difficult situation. Obviously, if it's written in paper, so you could text somebody, you can email somebody, or you can actually have a written contract, or even, believe it or not, I don't know if people are aware of this, but one of the first investors in Uber, okay, they wrote it on a napkin, their offer.
Jeez.
Wow. That was a pretty good offer, huh?
That's a wealthy napkin.
Exactly. Yeah. And too bad I just wiped my face with it.
Wing sauce and right in the trash. Well, next time.
Yeah, next time we'll do an Uber. But getting back to the oral contracts are probably the most difficult to prove. So you have to look for secondary evidence. So one, Was there anybody around when it was made? Okay, that's a possibility. Was it made over the telephone? Okay, it's not going to prove it, but you can say this is the conversation, and I called this person on such and such date at this time of day, and we made this agreement, and here it is. Oh, and by the way, I zilled this person $40 or whatever the price is, right?
20.
You said
We agreed on 20.
it's your watch.
Touche.
Exactly. So it is very difficult when you have an oral contract. It's probably one of the more difficult things. And so then, so you look for circumstantial evidence. And that's evidence that's not direct or exact. Direct evidence is, okay, you signed this right here. See, you signed it, Joe. So now you're liable, okay? But let's say you don't have the written contract. You have to look for secondary or sources. One, is a person there, or did somebody else, whatever. Two, is there anything that you might have that goes along that way? Was there an invoice sent? Was there anything that was done that would show that potentially a deal was done? But sometimes it can get to the nitty-gritty, and if somebody is saying, I'm not going to enforce it, I want to enforce it, and the other person is not going to do that, forgetting about the whole cost of law, which we're going to get into in a second here, it is very hard to prove. And so what happens is the judge has to make a decision. If it would ever go that far, it never would. Okay? Even a small claims court, probably. But the judge has to make a decision. So that the judge has to decide who does he think is more credible. Okay? So, here's my rap sheet,
Yeah.
3 convicted murders. Oh, you didn't know about that. No, 5 robberies, bank robberies. I've done a lot of stuff in my life.
You have that look in your eye. Yeah.
Yeah.
That tracks.
I'm sinister. So that could work out. On the other hand, if it's really, really just a flip of the coin, it can come down to that, right? So there's no, by the way, criminal conviction, okay, can matter, right? That's going to affect the credibility of a witness, and it's going to affect the credibility of a judge. And I've seen many, many cases where, it has nothing to do with this. So, you buy the watch and you find out, well, that guy was convicted of extortion, when he was 19 and he's 49 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, the reality is probably has nothing to do with it, but credibility sticks.
Sure.
It's like a lot of other things. It's kind of like having one of those diseases that lasts forever.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, especially if the judge doesn't know otherwise and has to, like you said, a coin toss, like he or she has to make a decision. And I'm looking at somebody who has a record versus somebody who doesn't,
Well, then the credibility is going to fall on the other side.
Right.
And so they're going to believe the other person. But if, let's say, nobody has any of these issues, then you have to, again, look. So, for instance, a big question I would say, if I was the judge, is, well, did you pay her? Okay? If you didn't pay her, well, then guess what? You don't have consideration because you never paid the money.
Right.
So therefore, whatever. And you're going to say, well, I didn't want to pay her until I got the watch. Well, that's kind of going to put you in the bad spot, right? But if I can say, oh, here's my Zelle, or here's my credit card, or my PayPal, or whatever you're using, right? Here's the $40 that I sent her on the same day that I sent the contract. Well, now it's going to sway, right? It's like a pendulum, right? Mm-hmm. It's going to sway back to you.
Yeah.
And they're going to say, so did you get the $40? That's my question.
That's
did you get
their
the 40?
one piece of quote unquote evidence. Yes, I did.
All right,
Here's
so you got
my
the $40.
Zelle. Yeah.
So then why didn't you give him the watch?
Right. Yeah. And then you're out the watch. You can't really win that, But like, why would anybody choose to enter a contract verbally? I find no good in that. I mean, certainly it obviously happens, but you got to really be trusting.
So half my practice is based on either A, people that have a verbal contract, or B, they have a written contract, but they didn't include everything that they should have.
Oh, good. Great. I just find that it's obviously super risky. I don't understand why two people would choose to do that.
It absolutely is super risky, but you know what? We could even go into a totally different path here. Why is it that some people get married and they don't have a prenuptial and they're rich, and some people do, right?
True. Yeah.
You got to have, if you're if you believe that in love and it's going to last forever and whatever, why do we need a prenup? And that's just going to muddy things up. And the other side is like, well, you know what? That's fine, but if things don't work out, and I work 10 years to make a $50 million business, I don't want to just give it up.
Yeah.
Right? So.
Well, we could ask Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck what they did. We'll see.
That's going to be very interesting.
Let's check that status, yeah.
Absolutely. But getting back to contracts, there's a lot of things that people aren't aware of. So we're going to go more towards the written contract now. So let's say some people have a written contract and it's not clear. So it may have the watch, maybe it has that portion of the watch in there, but there's a whole bunch of other things in there. It doesn't say anything, is the watch, how old is the watch, and what if the watch doesn't work? So I paid you the $40.
Yeah, and
I have a written contract. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Or it won't work unless I have a carrier agreement with AT&T or Verizon or M-Mobile, whoever these companies are. So it's even if it may work, but I can't use it, right? Or it's broken. The glass is broken. There's 500 other things on there.
Yeah.
But let's go over. I want to go over a little bit about contracts, something that people aren't aware of. So let's say we did enter into a written contract. All right, we signed it both, so we agreed. So now we're selling that watch for $40 or $20, whatever the price was, and that transaction is done. But now there's an issue, right? So there's something that's not clear. So if the contract is not clear, and it can be subject to more than one interpretation. So let's say you have a contract and it says the watch will be transferred to me, but it doesn't give me a date, right? It's ambiguous, right? So the way the law works is it says the party who drafted the contract, the person who wrote the contract, they have an ability to control what's in that contract. So if they do not have something in that contract that says the date, okay, then it's considered to be ambiguous. And the law says we will construe it against the person who wrote the contract. Why? Because they had the chance to make it clear.
You dropped the ball.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. In layman's term, they dropped the ball. And so the law is very interesting. It does have, you don't need to necessarily be a lawyer to understand these concepts, right? Another thing with the other 2 points in contracts that I want to make sure people are aware of, one is the attorney fee clause. So in California, if you have a written contract and contains everything, but it does not have an attorney fee clause, and then you have to go to court to enforce that contract against somebody. Hey, I never got the watch and I paid her the $40. And I hired Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. They're a very big law firm. Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. D-E-W-E-Y. D-E-W-E-Y.
Yeah.
Cheatham,
like
C-H-E-A-T-I-M.
I like it.
And Howe is H-O-W-E. Like the Dodger pitcher, Steve Howe.
Yeah. I like that one. That's good.
So, in those circumstances, lawyers can be very expensive, and you can have a $40 watch and spend $8,000 in legal fees, right? If you have an attorney fee clause in California, and you win the verdict, then you're entitled to collect attorney fees. But if you do not win the verdict, okay, so for instance, you settle out of court, you decide to settle at any point in time, you don't actually go through the trial, or you don't have that clause in your contract, then you're not going to get your attorney fees. And, let's say it's not a $40. Let's say it's an $8,000 job. You're making a deck on the back of your house, right? It's $8,000. Well, you're going to hire a lawyer and they're going to charge you $5,000. Well, that's crazy, right? But if you go ahead and have an attorney fee clause, it's not going to bother you as much if you go all the way. And with that, we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. And they always say about the Ask Brien show and the radio station KHTS, like no other station in the world. You know, like no other station in the world.
Yeah.
Exactly. Got to cast the characters. What can I say?
Starts with you.
Oh, you forgot the E for ego.
Oh, shoot. That's right.
We have no ego here. We're all very empathetic person.
Yeah.
Just like I don't want to get political, but I think Tim Wallace's son was crying at the thing yesterday.
Yeah, I
so,
saw that. Yeah.
And I guess that's empathy and emotion.
Yes,
so
there you go.
double E's.
You don't have a heart of stone.
Don't tell anybody. And remember, I'm the Tin Man.
That's right.
In Wizard of Oz, Tin Man.
I certainly do. Yes, one of my favorites. We'll edit that part out. Don't worry. No one will be any wiser.
Well, exactly. So you had some more questions for me. So we do. Listen, we could go more in depth on the contract part, But I think we also have other areas we wanted to cover, and I think one of the areas you said something about, you know, in fact, actually, you've done this with legal steps. You know,
Yeah.
should you
Yeah.
form an entity, right?
Right. Why and how.
We know the how, legal steps, right?
Yeah. Legalsteps.com. That's with a Z.com.
A lot cheaper than a lawyer, right?
Right. But so I want to start a business. So why would I incorporate? Why would I go through the extra steps to do that?
So what you're trying to do really is to form a separate legal entity that can protect your personal assets, right?
Okay.
So, for instance, maybe you own a house, you know, and you have, you know, $50,000 cash in your savings account and an IRA and whatever. You want that protected. So, if you just form a business and say, okay, Jen's calendars, or Jen's
watches. Let's
Okay.
stick with watches.
Oh wow, you're a big
Those,
watch person.
Those
All right.
are, yeah, you can
right.
market those
Gonna get them on, you can get one on Amazon, Amazon.com. Oh,
for
sorry.
$20.
But we don't guarantee that it works.
No.
And it's not as good as a Timex. But
True.
getting back to the position here, if you have no legal entity to protect you, okay, and something happens. So let's say you had a store, or let's say somebody had a watch, and I don't know, can't really explode, but I guess things can happen. Oh, so the watch went zzz, had a heart attack and died. So they're suing you for a heart attack.
Okay.
You got to make things up here, right?
This took a dark turn.
It's my
Should have
dark.
stuck with the calendar idea.
It's my dark hair. Only when it's died, though.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
I
So.
get it. I get it. I'm north of 40. I get it.
But anyway, so getting back on point here. If you do something in your own name, so it's Jen's Watches, okay, and you're doing business as Jen's Watches, so you have a fictitious business name because it's not Jen, it's Jen's Watches, right? So that's not your name.
It's
so
not
you'd have
me,
to,
right.
You have to get what's called a DBA. It's a fictitious business name. You have to register it with the county of Los Angeles or whatever county you're living in. You'd have to do that to get a fictitious business name. But that's not going to protect you personally. It's still in your name. So if someone sues the company for, you know, oh, he had a heart attack and died, and so I'm suing you for $250,000, okay? You don't want to give up your $250,000 if something goes awry.
So they'll come after you, your personal assets.
Exactly.
Even if, let's say, your business has the $250,000, it's
Well, then they
doing
can-
well. Then
right.
they, regardless of whether or not you
No,
have.
they can take it from the corporation
Okay.
as well.
Okay.
But
if you don't
well,
have
it's not a corporation. It's just your name, right?
Right.
So your bank account is going to be Jen's Watches or Jen Smith. That's not a real name. Jen Smith,
Right.
doing business
Right.
as Jen's Watches,
Okay.
right? So they can come after you. So by forming a separate legal entity, okay, you are kind of splitting everything up. So therefore, your house, your jewelry, your $50,000 in the bank account, whatever else you've got, okay, that's you personally. They can now sue the company, okay, for that $250,000. If the company doesn't have $250,000, you can close doors, okay? You could file bankruptcy just for the corporation, but your personal credit is going to be protected, right? Of course, there are some issues because there might be an officer or director. We'll get into that later. If you're a participant in the company, it might affect you on some loan documents, but not everything. But your personal assets are going to be protected by forming an LLC or a corporation.
So then they will choose to, I'm assuming, take whatever goods you had. You know, if I have machinery that produces whatever the product is, then they'll say, okay, now that machinery is ours. We're going to take it and sell it or whatever in order to get our funds.
Right. What you're saying is correct. So first, anyone that is trying to collect money, and attorneys are pretty smart about this. So first, they're going to look and see, do you have any cash in the bank? Okay. Cash is the easiest way to collect money. If there's no cash in the bank, then they're going to say, well, do you have any accounts receivable? That means money that's owed to you by other people. See if that money is outstanding, and maybe you can get those assigned to you, or when they'll send you the monies, whatever. Those are the two easiest things. The other thing is, the person who gets a judge, and this is only if you've gotten a judgment against you, so you have to go to court and get an actual judgment. You can also file a lien, okay? And it's called a judicial lien. So the judicial lien judicial lien will be on any property owned anywhere within the county. So, and if you have a house there, your house is going to be liened. So good luck when the mortgage rates were 8%, you bought your house, now it's down to 2 and you want to refinance. Ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
So that's one way. Now, on machinery and that type of stuff, typically is something called the UCC, Uniform Commercial Code, which is a code that is, and every state has one. And its commercial code basically goes over all the things about equipment, about sales and transactions, whatever. And so you can file a lien by filing a UCC 1 lien in that state if you have a business. So you can technically collect all those items. Now, as we said, the benefit of LLC starts off with limited liability, right? Same thing with a corporation, has limited liability. The liability is limited to the assets in the entity in most cases, not every case. Okay. Because otherwise, the law says, well, we don't want you to go out there and do whatever you want, right? So, let's say, I'm going to hit you over the head, steal your money, and now I got the money, so it's mine. They're not going to sit there and allow you to do that and say, oh, I have a corporation. There's no corporation that says you can hit somebody over the head and steal their money.
Right.
So if you have a personal, you can still be held personally liable in certain circumstances.
So it kind of begs the question again, what we were talking about in the first half of the show is, why would you put yourself in that situation? Why would you choose to not go down that road?
So we'll probably have to pick it up partway after the sponsorship, which actually does this for you.
Okay.
But, one of which is ignorance, right?
Yeah.
So if you don't know, and you decide, hey, I want to start a business, and my girlfriend down the street, Lisa, she has an umbrella company, and she's been doing very well, and she never did that. She doesn't even know what I'm talking about, and why pay lawyers or LegalZoom or Legal Steps or anybody else that money? It doesn't make any sense. So, you're just going to be paying all this money and have to file an extra tax return and do all this stuff. Why do you want to get involved? If the company's successful, then you can do it. Well, the problem is you're at risk, and so that's why you don't want to do that. But our sponsor is going to tell us a lot more information about this, and without any further ado, the Ask Brien Show is going to take a quick break for our sponsor, Legal Steps. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM.
And so you want to form a trademark. You're listening to this conversation.
Form a corporation.
Form a corporation, an S corporation, form an LLC. All of those things can be done through legalsteps.com. It's spelled LEGALSTEPZ. That's with a Z.com. And you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're not really, you're not protected. You don't exactly know, pardon me, you don't have the wherewithal in terms of like not getting yourself into any sort of legal trouble. So make sure you have the protection. With this course, you've got experts that have over 30 years experience. So you're not working with somebody who just started yesterday. You've got somebody who really knows what they're doing, a team of lawyers. They've got the experience, and they'll kind of guide you through it. And I say kind of, it's really, they will guide you through it. I love that you can see, so when you log in, you're on your computer, you can see the legal expert kind of at the bottom of the screen, and you can see their screen. So you are literally following along, and they're guiding you through the questions, guiding you through the statements, whatever it is, and you are just, okay, cross that T, dot that I. I know that I'm answering the questions the right way. Certainly, any sort of legal document can get a little bit intimidating, a little bit confusing, and you want to make sure that you're doing it correctly. If you get to the point where you're like pulling your hair out, you know what, I can't do it, forget it, they will just do it for you. So we've talked about this before. I took one of the courses a little while ago just to kind of get a feel for it. And it was really very easy. I was very surprised at how simple it was. It only took me not even 2 hours. I was able to work at my own pace in the comfort of my own home. I did it on a Saturday morning. Kids are asleep and the dog's just kind of chilling. I didn't have to worry about getting to somebody's course or online class at a certain time. I was able to do it at my own pace, pause, rewind, and even take notes. There's a workbook you can print out, scribble, highlight, all that fun stuff. Again, go to legalsteps.com, LEGALSTEPZ, that's with a Z.com. And oh, by the way, the courses are really affordable. You're not going to break the bank, so don't let that stop you. They're under $150 each. Legalsteps.com.
Wow. Thanks,
You're welcome.
Legal Steps, and thank you, Jen.
You bet.
All right. So we're back to the show. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. And we're going to continue our conversation about our favorite subject, limited liability. Oh, my God.
Okay, I do have to kind of deflect a little bit here. Do you get to the point sometimes where you're like, your brain is just hurting and you can't, because a lot of this stuff can be confusing? Or do you kind of, I guess you have to have the right mindset for it, right?
So I think it's like anything else, and this is true of any expert. When you've done it for so long, it's like nothing, right? So, I mean, I actually wasn't even a lawyer at the time. I think my first corporation that I ever did for somebody, I had just graduated college, and I think it was 1987, and he hadn't even gone to law school, and somebody needed me to incorporate. He was an accountant, and I did it for him, and I was like, wow, that's pretty easy.
Kind of fun, yeah. So
I
you just have to have you're built different, I think.
Stocky.
Yeah. Sure, that's what we'll call it.
Me and Danny DeVito, baby.
Yeah. You guys are twins.
Exactly. Me and don't forget Arnold.
True.
It's triplets.
It's
All
hard
right,
to confuse, yeah.
But that is really a valid point. But when you come down to it, people don't know. That's why people go to companies like Legal Steps. That's why people go to lawyers, okay? But most people, when they're starting a business, they're not thinking about the legal consequences. Hey, I got no money. And by the way, that's what they say. I got no money. I ain't here. All right. So they're thinking about, if the business takes off, then I'll incorporate. But I don't want to have to spend money incorporating, spending money to do a separate tax return each year that my accountant's going to charge me for, and keep separate accounts, whatever. If it works out, I'll do it. Unfortunately, if anything happens until that time, okay, you're at risk, right? B, usually it's not like, okay, it's on the top of my list. A lawyer, myself, right? You've taken the Legal Steps course, so you have a little bit of a background. The average person doesn't know, and they're just, hey, as I said, I'm going to start selling Lisa's umbrellas down the street. And I may not, she may or may not have told her husband. She may or may not know how much money she has in the bank or that anything's at risk. She doesn't realize it.
Yeah.
And then, something does happen, right? He poked my eye out, and and I was a professional tennis player, so now I can't play tennis. Mm-hmm. So I'm suing you for $9 million.
Great. Don't open the umbrella inside.
Well, that's also bad luck.
It is.
But now we know why.
Yes. The tennis player is going to get injured.
As soon as we're done with this episode, we know Jen's going to run out and tell her husband, we need to do something to protect ourselves.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it really, it makes you wonder, why wouldn't you do that? You don't want to kind of just leave yourself hanging. And so when you're looking to register a trademark, is that kind of the same thinking?
Completely different concept. So a trademark, okay, first of all, understand two things. A trademark is a symbol used to identify goods. A service mark is an item used to do a service. So if you are selling a telephone and you put a mark on it, that's a trademark. But if you're doing service like lawyer, I'm an attorney and I'm selling my legal services, well, that's not a product. That's a service. So technically it's called a service mark. They have the same rules for both. Now, one thing before we get into our break that I want to make sure people are aware of. In order to own a trademark, you don't look online, file a trademark ownership, and say, I own it. It doesn't work that way. It works the exact opposite. You have to use the mark in commerce. That's the definition, legal definition. What they're really saying is use the mark in business. Okay? If you're not using it in business, okay, so you can't use it personally, for your own stuff, although you can get your personal name trademark. I'm not going to go that far, okay? But you have to be using it for a business product or service. And then at the end of the day, if there's two people that are using Gen watches, right, they're going to look and say, who started using that mark first and who was using it in more than one state? And if you were doing that first, you're going to have a superior right, even if somebody registered the mark in 2022, but if you started in 2020 and they just started in 2022, you will have a superior right. So you can actually go after them for trademark infringement, something people are not aware of. But you want to do that because when you do have a trademark that's registered, and we're going to go more into that process after the break, you can put that R with a circle. So if you've ever seen the R with a circle, that just means your mark was registered. If you don't have the R with a circle, that means it hasn't been registered. But that does not mean you don't have any rights. You do. But for that, you're going to have to wait. We're listening to the Ask Brien Radio Show, KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're listening to the Ask Brien Radio Show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. Well, Jen, you had a question?
Well, we were kind of continuing on talking about why would you incorporate, and then we get into like taxes and all that, and that can get a little tricky, right?
But I thought you had another question. How do people reach me? Oh. That's not an easy thing to do. Now, I mean, Jen could technically reach me because she can just go over the side and just punch me in the face and go, Peter, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, what are you doing, you ding dong? Yes, I mean, obviously people are listening to this and they want to know, like, okay, this guy really knows what he's talking about. I need to get a hold of him so I can.
I could be a good bluffer.
No, well, again, lawyers have to have that little, that like able to pivot,
Absolutely.
So if somebody's listening right now and they think, gosh, I could really use his help, how would they get a hold of you?
So the website for my firm is lacorporateattorney.com, LACORPORATEATTORNEY.com. Law office is located in Century City in Los Angeles, but we've handled lawsuits as far away as New York. We've had clients from Australia.
Oh, wow.
So if there's a matter or dispute in California, anywhere in the state, we can help. We had a trial a couple months ago up in Santa Rosa. You can also become an attorney in a different state if you're sponsored by a law firm in that state. So we've done that in New York and Florida and Virginia. Okay. So we've done that. So there's a lot of ability to do that.
Do you prefer to keep like a certain amount of I guess lawsuits, technically, a certain amount of clients going at once, or does it ebb and flow, I guess?
So there is an ebb and flow to a law firm just like any other business, but especially as a lawyer, you have so many responsibilities to the client. You want to make sure the client, is not just being represented well, but the client knows what's going on in their case, is getting invoiced, everything is working out finely. So for that, we typically have 12 to 15 cases at a time. Now, obviously, if you have a very complicated case, that could take a lot of time up, right? But on the other hand, you need to have a certain number of cases. You have certain cash flow issues any law firm has. I don't want to get really into that, but that's it. Now, I did want to tell everybody, if you've missed anything on this show today, we do have a podcast coming out. The podcast generally comes out probably in about 10 days. If I was doing it, it would take 10 weeks because I don't know what I'm doing. But we do have somebody who works on that. We also, you can listen to this usually within 48 hours. Typically, the radio station has this available, and you can go to KHTSHometownstation.com and listen to it right off there if you wanted to, or Facebook Live. So it's pretty simple to get to. If you missed anything or you said, you know what, I need to relearn something about this section here. Now, that's what I call being in the dark. It just went off for a second.
Yeah, if you're watching on Facebook, our TV goes to sleep if you don't catch it on time.
Absolutely. So that was the thing. Now, we have just a few minutes left, so we just want to quickly go over. We can't go over everything, and at some point in time we will. But you were asking me a question about taxes.
Taxes, yeah. It seems like a bad, scary word.
Well, tax is a bad word anyway.
Yeah.
And I think I'd rather have the FBI than the IRS. Although they're both pretty bad.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, corporation does have to pay their own taxes. Just like you're an individual and you pay taxes, or probably jointly, you also, if you have a corporation or business, that corporation also has to pay taxes. Now, if you qualify, so if you have less than a certain number of shareholders, and that's the owners of the business, and all the owners agree. So maybe it's you and 5 other people in the business. Everybody agrees. You're all residents of the United States of America. You're citizens, or you're going to become a citizen. Okay, then and you have less than 35 shareholders. You can become what's called an S corporation. If you are an S corporation, then what happens is if the company earns $1,000, okay, and you have 4 shareholders, every shareholder gets, you have to file a tax return, but it's a very simple return, and every shareholder gets a K1 statement that says I earned $25 because I own 25% of the business. It earned $100, so it's $25, or whatever the percentages are and whatever the number is. And then you take that and you put it on your own tax return. So what does that mean? You don't have to worry about the corporate tax. You have to worry about your personal tax. So that can help out a lot. There's a lot of areas in taxes that we can get into. We're going to do that on a different show. But thank you very much to the audience, and thank you, Jen, for participating.
Of course.
And thank you, KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. The Ask Brien show is over. Over and out. Da, 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 da.